Haidong. In this video, we're going to talk about finding and using guards. I can already hear the snarky comments, right? So like, oh, find guards. There it is. There's a guard. Or maybe like, there's a guard, there's a guard, there's a guard. Or if you're not from Gumdo, you can do some tuta portrait de ferro, right? Maybe a little bit of boar's tooth, maybe a little bit of posta de donna, whatever, right? So it's like, okay, like it's easy to find a guard, right? Because like, oh, especially if you're from either Kendo, Iaido, or Gumdo, it's like, there we go. This is the best guard, right? Which is allegedly also something that's very common in rapier, right? So what I'd like to kind of play with for this one, this is more of a conceptual idea, and it might be a little bit of a paradigm shift for some folk, because I taught this idea in a recent seminar, and it seemed to be new, so here we are, right? The idea is any cut and any movement with the sword is going to be a guard of some sort. That's going to have a few examples, right? So it's not just a random sentence that's floating in the air. But first I want to make sure that my transparency is clear, right? So not dissimilar to last week's video, right? Or 2 weeks ago, however I'm doing the schedule. So the two places I'm getting this from, again, the general concept, and this is kind of like me instantiating a little more with regard to Gumdo and a bunch of other things, is going to be from, again, my HEMA instructor in Reading, as well as Guy Windsor on the internet. So we have that. Again, their information will be in the doobly-doo, but let's get back into it. So although I mentioned it from two Fioran users, practitioners, it is not a concept that's only from, obviously, Italian, let alone European, let alone that style, right? So it's not just HEMA style. It is something that's also very common in other styles. So let's kind of reel that back to what I meant, right? So it's like, okay, any motion of the sword, ideally like cuts and stabs and stuff like that, can be a guard. It's like, okay, let's do one that you probably feel like, yeah, that's not gonna be good. So let's just do our time-tested center cut, right? I'll do it facing you and I'll do it facing this way because it'll be a little bit easier to see, but okay. So what I could do is obviously the two extremes. Is this a guard? Right? So potentially, yeah, you could actually use this to thrust into someone's throat. What would the beginning? Well, this is, again, if you're from a Gumdo perspective, this is Choshunsei. It is also, from a Kendo perspective, Jodan, right? As well as there's going to be a lot of other styles as well. So, okay, beginning and end of cuts. Sure, why not, right? So, high guard, maybe a low-ish guard. Obviously, if we do a diagonal cut, right, so I'll face you and do it, right? So, high guard, low guard. If we do a diagonal cut, is this a guard? Not usually seen in Gumdo, but it is a guard in Italian style, right? So this is posta de donna, right? So you can have a little more here, a little more here, however you're feeling more confident. Cut. Is this a guard? Chiase, right? At least if you're doing it from a Gumdo position. Now that's going to turn into something a little bit different from Italian, but I'm going to try to keep it with regard to Gumdo because that's probably most of my watchership, so let's keep it there. So like, okay, so like beginning and end. Cool, not really used to it, but you could do it. It's pretty much Choshunsei on the side. This is just Chiase. We could do the same thing here, which is a low guard here. Cool. Likewise, we can actually do something very similar, one-handed for our Yedo practitioners, right? So if you are second degree, I think is where it is right now, this is a one-handed Chiase, right? So obviously I can cut down and be ready to shift, right? I can also do like a knee strike, same kind of thing. Okay, so we have the beginning, we have the end. Well, that's not going to make an infinite number of guards, right? Can we possibly use any point in between? Let's take a look, right? So what would be kind of like a ridiculous one is crosscuts. So like, is this a guard? Yep. Now usually what we see in Gumdo is in front, right? So if you've done Section 12, for instance, you've been introduced to this little guy, as well as here, it's usually more off to the side this way. But in theory, you could do the same thing on this side, right? Even here, I was like, okay, halfway. There's no way that's a guard, right? Well, so if you at least follow my train of thought, at least with regard to Yedo form, let's see the beginning of number 1, right? So this is very clearly presented as a thrust, but is also used as a guard, right? So just to kind of justify it to myself, right? If this was indeed a thrust, you wouldn't be doing this as your next move because you're stuck in the person and there is a shard of something on the floor. Versus, if I'm here, I'm engaging the side of the sword, I'm pressuring it, release it, and going off to wherever their sword goes. That's a good one. So this might not look like a normal guard. If we raise it up, suddenly that looks like Yedo 9, right? Before we do a happy little jump 360 crosscut, which is a somewhat new addition, so have fun with that, people going for second degree. So yeah, so the idea of pretty much at any point in a cut, you can stop and have that be a guard is sort of both liberating as well as like, oh, that makes sense, right? Because in theory, if you needed to, if like I'm using this as a guard, which you could, I can engage with someone here, right? It's again pretty much our Gumdo long guard, just on the side, right? I mean, it's pretty much like a cut here, right? So if I wanted to, I could finish the cut, be very weak, but obviously I can also use this, using the initial momentum to shift it around into another cut. There's a lot of things you can do. So the main idea that I want you to think about as you're watching me move around is go through a form, stop it, like pretty much like almost like you record yourself and you just hit pause at a random time. Can that be a guard, right? Now, obviously all of them can be guards, whether or not they are maximized to a certain use would be kind of like for interpretation. Now, what I like about this is it suddenly broadens your possibilities, right? So pretty much you can do any cut, see like where you want to stop it, and try to fight from that guard, right? So this is obviously a drill I'd like for you to do if you do a lot of sparring, is like, okay, let me do, I don't know, like an uppercut. Let me fight from here. Okay. Maybe if you want to like change it up, you can be a little bit closer. So this is actually a guard in Section 10, right? It is also, I think it's posta finestra, probably posta, whatever. The window guard from the Italian, right? I'm sure the Germans have a very similar guard. I have no idea what any of those are called, so window guard, right? Mostly because I remember that name because there is a very lovely word called defenestration, which means to throw someone or something out a window. So fenestra, right? So window guard. But anyway, okay, so upcuts, stop here. What about here? Maybe, right? So I'm kind of like maybe goading someone in. I can maybe do a cut switch, for example, right? So really just be creative with it, right? You can obviously also do this one-handed, as I was just kind of doing, right? Because what we just did with the Yedo, right, is this guard. But I can also do it one-handed, right? I can also do 9 one-handed, even a little bit over here, and just play with your new infinity of guards. An idea that I want to make sure I'm also reinforcing is, so there's probably a reason why you are taught certain guards. So for example, the one that whenever I spar anyone from a Gumdo school or from Kendo school or from Yaido school is going to be, right, is the middle guard, right? So Chudan no Kamae, or just the Kenjoksen, right? So our middle guard. So there is a reason why certain guards are taught, right? So now obviously there's going to be different variants of middle guard, as you can probably imagine, noticing that each of them are almost like coming from a stab position, right? Obviously, this is more kendo, this is more gumdo, this is me. But notice, so again, this is one that's usually taught, right? But again, think about why it's taught. So in practice, so again, this is after like many people have played with it, is this is a jack of all trades. I can defend from really anything coming in within reason. I can also attack from really anywhere within reason, but keep in mind that it's all like 60-70% power, right? If that, if you're really a good practitioner with it. Versus if you take a look at some of the potentially other guards that you are taught, or even some of the guards that you aren't taught, you're going to notice that they have different attributes, right? So our chiase, which is usually my left leg forward, is one that I really love to fight in because it's very almost like aggressively easy to deflect. So this is very clearly a defensive guard. Someone's being sassy with me, or probably this way because that'd be a little bit easier. Someone's being sassy with me, they're trying to dispatch me, smack strike. Okay, I just smacked your sword out of the way and cut you without really having to move because allegedly you were close enough to cut me, so I'm going to get your sword out of the way and I'm going to counter you, probably letting your momentum still coming towards me, help me enter your jugular, etc. So what I would like for you to consider is like, okay, I have this new infinitude of cuts and guards, right? But there are like the standard ones, right? Or however many you want to do. So really think about like, okay, what is so great about those guards? Why is Pao Sensei taught, but not like this guy in Gumdo at least, right? Or like why is, what's another weird one? I mean, we do this one in Gumdo, so why is this one more common than this one, right? Why do we even have this guard taught in a Gumdo form, and this one's not? And why this and not this, right? So these are all things I would like for you just to play with, right? Because there's going to be an answer, right? Because again, so yes, you can have a guard at any position, but some are going to be more effective for a general purpose than others. But is an idea that I think might potentially change the way you see a form. So the homework, because everyone loves homework, is going to be go through a form. It could literally be form 1. You're kind of limiting yourself with that. But maybe go through your current form, maybe a few previous forms, stop at any point, or be aware of, like, as you're moving through a form, like, oh, from here, if I really want to, I could shift, right? Oh, from here, I can thrust into someone. So go through a form and really try to digest what you could do if you were stopped. Another piece of homework would be to go through the guards that you're actively taught and figure out like their good attributes, their bad attributes, whatever is going on with them. So notice why that they're taught to you. Now, some of them, as the silly ones I was showing you, like with the left wing, for example, is like it's good at one thing. Side note, it's for slapping things out of the way. It's good for one thing. So if you're really expecting that thing, go ahead. But I really want you to also go through those guards, digest them, understand them, and now it's no longer like, well, these are the only guards I can do. I want you to expand your horizons. So with that, make sure you stay safe, stay humble, and keep training. Haidong.